Hey guys, I wanted to make a video about anxiety, and this has come about, namely last week someone I know from back in England asked me if I had made any videos on the subject of anxiety. And I couldn't say directly I had, for all I felt at least some of the things I had spoken about from my own life experience can help with it. And indeed, in my own life, many years ago now, I have had to deal with anxiety. And I dare say even now in some points within my waking life here, there is a lot of pressure on myself here in Tanzania doing what we do, that sometimes the subtle notions of anxiety start to show themselves in my waking life. And due to that, I'm able to explain how I deal with it, I think, in a half decent way that will be able to help people. And because they asked, I've decided I'll try and talk about it. I've also had other people speak to me about anxiety recently, and I just took it as maybe a synchronicity to speak on it. And I want to speak on what I see as the types and causes and how they interrelate with one another. And what I can say is anxiety attacks, in my past, many years ago now, I know what an anxiety attack feels like, and it's a terrible thing, dizziness, shortness of breath. And a lot of that just boils down to and ties into not being conscious of what is going on. And someone who has anxiety attacks, hearing me say that, might immediately feel friction with myself, but just hear me out, I don't mean it in a bad way. So, anxiety in my own life is not something I worry about so much anymore. If I get stuck in a few days of chaos here, where I can't get enough rest, I can't get time out to refill my cup, as it were, and to meditate, then I will start to show signs that any human will of being under pressure, and this can give way to the beginning signs and the feelings of feeling anxious and anxiety within me. And sometimes doing what we do here, you can't work out if that will happen. I'd say at least once a month it will happen. With so many special needs children, you might have 3 nights in a row where different ones are seriously ill and you just don't get your rest, and this all starts. This discomfort within us. But this is where I want to speak about the types and the causes. Because aside from the full-blown panic attacks with the palpitations and so on and so forth, there are different types of anxiety that we go through, but the root cause tends to be the same in each and every one. In my experience, that is. I'm not a specialist, but I have gone from one end of the spectrum in my life to the other. I've gone to a point where I can sit and observe an anxious feeling within me, whereas most people cannot. And whereas in my past, if you have watched my video on my journey with depression, you'll know that there was a time where anxiety was not something I could observe, it was something that consumed me. But now, having found the strength that I've found within my spiritual practice and within a level of connectivity and illumination to the true journey of our existence as human beings, shall we say, then I found so much strength in that I can take on 26 disabled children. I can take on the education and the medical care and the nutrition of over 600 children. I can take on the care of 30 boys who have been raped and abused and have a great deal of trauma and many, many issues. I can take on 55 rescue dogs, and so on and so forth, because I found this strength within me. And this strength exists in all of us. It's the weaknesses, which are ultimately illusions, that we have to work on removing. Now, as I said, there are different types and causes. So let me start with how I see the first type, which can incorporate many different causes within it, but it's a type of anxiety that stems from chemical imbalance in the human body. Now, first subheading in there you can put in there is substance. As we habitually begin to use substance, we change the alchemical balance of our body, and thus we begin to change the energetic balance of our body. And so, if you have become a regular user of alcohol, alcohol is a terrible thing for unbalancing our vessels, chemically speaking. And what can happen from there is we can become dependent, because let me try to define anxiety briefly, but I want to do that later on. Anxiety is a state of indecision. You can't decide, and it's like a ball bouncing between two walls. You can't, to get the ball to be still, then you will find some peace, but your indecision leaves you rattling, completely rattling, and this is where the anxious feeling comes from. Now, if you get into this cycle of using a substance to still that ball rattling between the two walls, then when the substance wears off, because it will numb you out, it will numb you to the questions and to the indecision. It will do that. But once it wears off, which it must unless you wish to become an alcoholic or a 24-hour drug abuser, it will wear off. And when it does, the ball is rattling and bouncing even faster than it was when you began. And this is where the problem with substance abuse comes in. Substance to try and subdue, to try and numb the feelings that we get from the world that create anxiety and worry within us, can only lead to more anxiety and worry, because the alchemical balance of your body comes out, and that in itself can generate feelings of disconnectivity and also feelings of dependency, and with it stronger feelings of anxiety. Because to go to that metaphor, the ball is bouncing and rattling even faster once you have the numbing feeling wear off. Now, substance, you can also include food in there, and from ancient times this has been spoken of and known about, and it's absolutely correct, 100%. I see it in my own body after fasting, when I'm ultra sensitive especially. It's very clear to me which foods do what to my moods. And if you look to Vedic teachings, and if you haven't read the Vedas, then I suggest you do, but look into that world of Vedic teachings, and you have a recommendation of eating what they call sattvic foods. And you have sattvic, rajasic and tamasic foods. And at one end of the spectrum, the sattvic foods are a good way to find good alchemical balance in the body, and with it good mental control and a sense of well-being and peace within you. And at the other end of the spectrum you have tamasic, and the tamasic foods are fried and overstimulating, and they sit terrible and agitate your intestinal tract, and alcohol is in there as well, and these things don't allow your mind to settle. And in the middle you have foods that stimulate desire, and overconsumption of them, overconsumption of any of them, can stimulate desire and make you connect more with that illusory self, which is, as many people label, the ego. But you connect more, let's put it this way, with that indecision which is causing your anxiety. Now, part of being healthy within our bodies, and the reason we don't necessarily understand how to be healthy in our bodies, ties into what I'm going to say next as well. But simple things like being hydrated. If you're not hydrated, you can make yourself anxious. If your body is not hydrated enough, you can actually make yourself anxious. You can do that. Now, this ties into what I'm going to say next, and that is the mindfulness of our own bodies. To raise our children without them being mindful of their bodies, as we do within the Western system, is a terrible thing, because many people can even be dehydrated And their minds are so busy inside this Western system that they don't know they're dehydrated. Because it's a subtle, very subtle arising in the body to tell you. Of course we know when we get a dry mouth and our tongue's dry, but beyond there, there's also sometimes more subtle pointers regarding the fact that we are dehydrated, and most people are dehydrated. Most people, when they urinate, it's very yellow. This is dehydrated. I always aim to urinate clear as many times a day as I need to. And this way I stay full of energy, I stay hydrated, and my mind works at its optimal best. But becoming very dehydrated can cause anxiety. And I know this from when I dabbled with dry fasting. Without a doubt, it conjured some very unusual feelings in me. So why or how can it be that we are eating the wrong foods and making ourselves feel anxious, not drinking enough water, making ourselves feel anxious, using substances that can make us feel anxious? There's many different substances we know, alcohol and of course most recreational drugs, and even to some degree cannabis makes people very, very anxious for all it's supposed to relax you, because when you come down, the mess is still there. So you need more. And then there's an anxiety in finding it if you don't have your own farm or something. There's a constant anxiety surrounding it. Why do we not realize that? Well, look at the system we live within in the West, and you have all these distractions: TV, computer games, movies, overstimulating foods, junk foods, so on and so forth. And we are raised within there, never being told about the discipline side of things to disconnect from there. So your mind is very much constantly overtaken. Even just walking down the street, the amount of adverts that are going into your consciousness is unbelievable. But very rarely do we teach our children to become very mindful of their surroundings and their body around them. And thus we get anxious by that overload of information. And it's overloading us so much that we can't even hear our body subtly telling us, hey, I'm actually dehydrated here. Hey, that food has made me super anxious tonight. Hey, that food has made me feel sad. We don't even attribute it to it. Many people can go their whole lives never realizing it. And so they get stuck in this horrible cycle of eating the wrong food, going home feeling anxious, numbing out with a substance or numbing out with the media, and all the while, as soon as they're not in front of that media, which is taking over their thought processes and their decisions, as soon as they are not using that substance and they come back to themselves, that ball is rattling faster than ever in that room, which is basically your mind moving between its positions of indecision. And that's where the anxiety is arising from. Inside our Western system, the anxiety created through substance is one thing. The anxiety created through the system itself is another, because the direct input of light and sound and imagery into the mind at the same time unbalances us mentally. You've got substances and incorrect eating unbalancing us in one way. We've got the media unbalancing us in another. We've got technology, whereas we get out of and into a disrupted sleep cycle, something I'm terrible for doing myself. This too unbalances the body. All of these things lead your body to react. It's not just it's not just, for instance, John that's having this anxiety problem. It's my vehicle responding in this terrible alchemical way, and the electric messages that passing through my brain are all a mess, and so I start to get panicked. And then some people get so panicked and so anxious that they begin to breathe too much. Again, they are not conscious of their breath. They're so worried and they're not thinking, they start to breathe too much. It's because they are not consciously taking enough breath in. They start getting dizzy. If they could sit still and go even several times, they would begin to release that ball, the indecision, they would begin to release it. And this is what we need to do. Is anxiety is not something you need to slay, you need to battle. It's something you quite simply need to drain away. Draining something away is a very easy process. We see it just slowly disappearing. There's no battle going on. It's something you need to drain away. But you need to get the plug out of the sink to drain it away, of course. Now, I'll get on to what that plug is and how you can take it out, or how I took it out. But there is another, in the way I perceive it, there is another type and cause of anxiety, and it is the most important of all. Aside from not having discipline over the mind and over that which we consume, or an understanding of the relationship between what we consume and the response of our body, aside from the overuse of substance or the overuse of distraction and entertainment, which ultimately leaves you with a hangover, which makes you feel even more anxious. I'm not just referring to alcohol, but I'm referring to even watching movies, watching series too much. These things leave you with a hangover because your mind all of a sudden is left with much more work to do, it feels, because it's just been having to do nothing for many hours. So aside from all that, the main, I find and have found in my own life, the main cause that I see of anxiety in humanity is this fear of the existence itself. And I don't mean that people are scared of the wall or scared of a tree. Not that level of fear, for all some may be. I'm referring to a fear due to a misunderstanding of what they are. And this misunderstanding can make them feel isolated, can make you feel lonely, can make you feel like you're completely disconnected from everything around you. And from there you start to again raise these feelings of indecision within you, which begins to create inside you these anxious feelings and emotions. You see, many people feel like they are on the edge of creation, as if creation happened and they were just some sort of thing that was plopped on the end of it. Now, however you perceive reality of to began, if you perceive it as someone created it or something created it, or if you perceive it in a more science-based manner and say there was this big bang, either way you can go back to this central point of the beginning of creation, the beginning of the existence. In a speech about creation, you would say the point of light, let there be light. Science, you would say the point of that big bang. But if there's a point of creation which everything starts somewhere, and there's a time where this big bang started and began, you're not something that's just additionally on the outskirts of that big bang. You're not just positioned yourself on the edge of creation. You are creation. You are that bang. No one switched off the bang. So if that bang did happen, you are the bang banging. Everything around you is the bang banging, but you're connected to that original central point of bang. You're connected to that original central point of creation. You're not separate from it. This means that however many billions of years, trillions of years ago, it all began, you were there. You just can't remember. But you were there. Whether you believe it to be scientific, believe it to be spiritual, metaphysical, you were there at the point of creation. You were there at the point and the ignition of that bang. And you are the continuance of creation expressing itself. And you are the continuance of that bang banging. And you are not external, plopped on top of it. You are it, spreading out, banging, creating, expressing. And once you realize that, a connectivity can arise in you. And that connectivity that arises in you is that when you meet another person, you realize that, hey, this is the bang. It's just coming to me in the form of this person. Hey, there's the bang. The bang that I was present for at the beginning, there it is banging as the light coming through the leaves of a tree, as the bird singing. What a magical place it is to realize that connection. And it's undeniable. You have to see it. Now, here's the problem and why we don't see it. Many of us have begun to believe that we are sitting on the edge of that bang, on the edge of creation. Because you're feeling all of this bad stuff. I am feeling this, I am thinking this. And when you become someone who gets to the point where you are not thinking, but you realize you are thoughts. When you realize you are not feeling something, but you are feelings. When you realize that you don't feel love for your children, but you are love for your children. Then there's nobody to feel and there's nobody to think anymore. And when there's nobody left to think, nobody left to feel, you're entering the connectivity to that origin of what you are. You're entering the connectivity to the origin of creation. You're entering the connectivity to the ignition of the bang. And when you get there, anxiety begins to fade in an instant. Because you pulled the plug. Because how can you have indecision? How can you any longer stay battling inside that space of indecision? You pull the plug. Instead of thinking this, instead of thinking that, instead of feeling this, instead of feeling that, you begin to enjoy the ride of feeling and enjoy the ride of thinking. And the ride's like waves. You have crests and troughs, crests and troughs. But we're all riding the same ride. Now, I say, in one retrospect, it's not just meditation that can do this, that can raise you up from this. In my experience, service to others and good deeds can be a very selfish thing. They can make you strong. They did me. I became very strong thanks to doing good deeds in service to others. See, if you liken, earlier I said in the video, you can liken anxiety to a ball bouncing off two walls. Let's liken anxiety to a ball on a pool table. And that ball is just, it's got infinite power to bounce off the cushions off the side of the table. So you've got this pool table, the ball's just bouncing around the place like this. And this motion is the human mind flicking between the indecision. And the human mind is something that likes to move constantly. Constantly. As you look to you don't even realize your mind is moving. If you watch a tree blowing in the wind and you say, well, is the wind moving the tree, or is the tree moving in the wind? Which one is it? Is it the tree moving? Is it the wind moving? The actual fact, they are just happening. They are just doing what they do. They are the bang banging. It's your mind that's moving in evaluation between the two. Your mind's deciding, is the wind moving, the tree moving? And it's your mind. If your mind's quiet, you take it in. Just like a child, just as Jesus told you, become as children to enter the kingdom, and you do. Everything's a wonder, everything's stunning, everything's beautiful. But the mind likes to move, and the movement of the mind is the root of the problem of anxiety. So if you liken it to a pool table with a ball bouncing around, meditation can slow down the ball. Now, every time the ball hits a cushion or hits the side of the table, it releases something that you don't want to hear. It releases doubts. It releases worries for the future. It releases doubts about the past. But all of these things are echoes. You know, the future and the past only exist as an echo to show you where you are, which is the present moment. But as this ball moves across and it's bouncing and bouncing, the faster and harder it bounces, the more anxious you get. It's too much. So you need to slow that ball down. And you can slow it down, first of all, in meditation. And imagine meditation is almost as if grass starts to come up out of the pool table. So there's more friction, so the ball has to roll more slowly. And this is what the meditation does. It creates more friction on the surface of the table so the ball can't bounce and roll as fast. It slows it all down a bit. But the problem we then have, or I've seen, is that the ball will still get to the cushion and the doubt will still come. And you can't be in a state of meditation all of the time. You have to go about your daily life. And so when it hits the cushion, the ball might start again, and it's picking up speed, and you're starting to feel anxious again, and you need to go and meditate and grow the friction on the surface of the table. Imagine it as grass coming out of a pool table, so the ball has to slow down. And this is good daily to do this. This is a necessity. But something that I discovered in my life is that when the ball hits the cushion and you get these doubts and these worries, that in actual fact, if you live in service and you put self-importance out of the window and you put the pursuit of truth and service to those in need on the planet inside the equation somewhere, as the ball hits the cushion and you get a doubt about your past, eventually what happens is the cushions start to get bigger. With every good deed, with every moment of charity, with every person you help, the cushions get bigger and softer. And then as the ball hits the cushion, it barely bounces back out again. And instead of getting a negative attack from within your thinking mind, within your ego, you might get a doubt. You might get a doubt of, hey, you didn't do good enough with this, what if this doesn't work out? But if you fill up on such things as good deeds, it's very easy to say to yourself, actually, you know what, yes, that might not work out, but it worked out for this, and look at the good it did. You might say, yes, I made that mistake in my past, but I also did this, and that wasn't a mistake, and that helped somebody. And you might hit something and say, yes, I did hold contempt for that person after what they did for me, but if you practice the true virtues of humanity, then when you hit it, you can say, I'm empowered because I forgave that person that wronged me, and I healed from it. You see, extending the virtues into your life of charity and forgiveness and gratitude softens the cushions to such a degree that it gets to the point where you actually, if you want to move that ball, the ball will always be moving. But if you want to move it with some speed, then someone's got to come over and give it a good whack. And life sometimes will come and give it a good whack. And we will all worry in life. You will never get to a point where you don't worry. But if you're not consuming the wrong substances, if you're practicing meditation, if you're not consuming the wrong media and entertainment, and you are nourishing your mental body with more positive input and thought, then even if the ball gets a good whack, all it's going to do is bounce off a pool table of soft cushions that release nothing but good memories, good thoughts and positive affirmations because you've been practicing them. And in time you become blessed as I am, where my doubts of the past are, I have doubts of my past, I have things I regret, but I've forgiven myself for them. And when I get anxious for the future, I just need to sit still and say, okay, I'm worried maybe about paying this bill for the children, maybe it's about doing this, but I get still and I remember, okay, we've always managed before. I felt this way before, somebody came in the end. God sent somebody in the end. The bang heard me. Because the bang didn't ignite itself to create suffering. God didn't create all that we are just to suffer. And so he listens. But you have to let him in. And the way to let him in is to pull the plug and let your anxiety drain away. And with it, let the idea that you are a thinker, that you are a feeler, excuse me, drain away with it. Because when there's nobody left behind to feel, accept the continuance of feeling, there's no one left behind to think, accept the continuance of thought. You can reconnect to that pool, you can heal, nourish yourself, and you can come back to your waking life. And you can remember that you choose how you perceive it out there. By choosing to have your body alchemically balanced, by choosing to have your psychology fueled with the correct information to allow a human being to be as functional as possible. And by allowing yourself to remember that billions of years ago, you were there for the start of creation. Your ego wasn't. But that which is expressing itself inside of you right now, by beating your heart and growing my hair and growing your children in front of you right now, the force behind there, the life that is us, was there. And so the life that dwells in all of us was present. And every face you meet, every bird you hear singing, every dog you hear barking, is that creation experiencing itself and coming to you. It is the banging in its own way on that particular day. And that for me dissolved all feelings of anxiety. And all I had to do was take that plug out. And that plug was the idea that I was an ego inside a bag of skin. That I was separate from everything. Life is relationships. A thorn is spiky because your finger is soft. Do we eat fruit because of our intelligence? Or do we eat it because of the intelligence of the tree who made it sweet and made it delicious? Do we walk without ground? Or does the ground walk because we have something to walk upon? Do we enjoy the light and the daylight without knowing it's dark? There was interconnectivity to it all. Losing that interconnectivity, losing that connection with Source, is where we get caught inside the idea that we are our thoughts instead of being thoughts. We are the thinker of our thoughts, and thus we start this indecision. You are not the thinker of your thoughts, because if I ask you what you're going to think in 2 minutes, you won't be able to tell me. You are the one who gives attention to the thoughts that appear. This does not make you the thinker. And when there's no one to think the thoughts anymore, then you can connect to that part of the matrix which connects you to God, the matrix of reality, which connects you to source, to God, connects you to the origin of the ignition of that bang, where you were present. I wasn't present as John St. Julian by any measure. But the life force within me that has gone on this journey to this point was. You were present at the source of creation. How can we be anxious once we realise that? But realising that means that you have to let go of being the thinker of your thoughts and the feeler of your feelings. To do as Jesus said. Take no thought for your life. If you take no thought, and you know God will provide beyond faith and knowing, like the knowing I am blessed to have. Then you can't have indecision. It's not possible anymore. So you simply drain away your anxiety. It's my experience anyway. God bless, guys.